Welcome to the Business Talk podcast. I'm your host Deepak from India. We are pleased to welcome Roland Wyn Jones, Senior Director of Communications Content in the Marketing and Communications Division at Columbia Business School, as our distinguished guest on today's podcast. Roland oversees content creation and social media initiatives, leading a team that shares the school's pioneering research and insights with a wider community of business leaders and organizations through engaging content and interactive digital experiences. Before arriving at Columbia Business School, Roland served as a managing editor of Hewlett Packard Enterprise Next digital platform. Earlier in his career, he held senior editorial positions at Time and Fortune magazines, as well as NBC News Digital. Roland earned an MS from Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism, an MBA in Finance and Entrepreneurship from NYU Stern, and is also a Columbia University Knight Baggot Fellow. In this episode, Roland Wyn Jones offers key insights from his work from Newsroom to Boardroom, crafting business narratives in the digital age. It's my pleasure to now welcome Roland Wyn Jones to the conversations. Roland, we are truly honored that you have accepted our invitation and delighted to have you with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Roland, your journey spans leading editorial roles at Time, Fortune, and NBC News Digital before transitioning into business education. What parallels and key differences do you see between shaping a news story for a global audience and curating business research narratives at Columbia Business School?
It's a good question. Well, I would say in both cases, good storytelling is important. It's about clarity and impact of the narrative. So, in both cases, you need to capture attention. We're in a world where attention spans are limited, and in a digital world, people have a lot of information coming at them. So we have to kind of get to that meaning quickly, just as we would in journalism. I guess the difference is sort of pace and purpose. In journalism, you kind of race against the clock. You want to be first. You want to be, of course, accurate. But breaking news breaking a story is a big deal. For us, it's about building a community, communicating the great research the faculty does, and sort of building that longer term credibility. So it's less a race against the clock, but what I love about Columbia is I get to slow down a little bit and draw those kind of sharper connections with that audience.
Roland, in journalism, editorial independence is paramount. How do you translate that principle into the academic and institutional context where branding and reputation often intertwine with research communication?
Well, I'd say that independence is still kind of that non-negotiable thing in what we do, but it works a little differently. We are, as I said, building that relationship with an audience, but also, what we do is we collaborate very closely with the faculty to understand their research and their ideas and the kind of mission of the institution and translate that into the content we create. I guess the challenge is to sort of keep that intellectual rigor intact, but also and protecting the reputation of the school, but also creating really engaging and interesting content. So editorial power, independence is still really important. I don't think that really changes when you work in the field I'm in now, as opposed to journalism.
How has the role of storytelling in business communication evolved in the digital age, especially with audiences now consuming research insights through podcasts, newsletters, and social media?
Yes, that's a great question. The storytelling is now these days is as much about the format of the story as the content of it. And so what we do is we sort of intuitively know what's going to resonate and what's going to be an interesting topic to cover the kinds of subjects and topics that our audience will be interested in from the research we do. And then we just sort of think about how that can be told on multiple platforms. So, for example, if we go to interview a faculty member about their research, we still bring cameras, we bring photographers, or we have videographer and photographer, but we capture as much media as we possibly can, thinking about all the different channels where it could go and the different ways the story could be told. So we try to capture as much as we can when we take some precious time away from a faculty member during the day, that you when they're obviously usually fairly busy, and then think about the mediums afterwards where we can propagate all of that information in the ways that we think it'll be consumed on the different platforms.
Roland, cutting-edge business research can be highly technical. What editorial strategies do you use to make these insights accessible without oversimplifying or losing academic rigor?
Yeah, that's a challenge too. It's a good one. I'd say that the way to think about it for us is what would a business person who finds this information useful, what's the most important thing they need to know? And so how can we make sure that message comes across clearly? So we kind of strip away the jargon and the the information that may be very highly technical and try to present that in a really easy to understand way for an audience that has a limited attention, and maybe not as sophisticated in, say, AI or climate economics. I'd say the aim is to translate rather than to dilute the information.
Given Columbia Business School's international reach, how do you approach making research narratives resonate with a global audience that may have very different business, cultural, or regulatory context?
That's a good question. So it's, I guess, business. The business is global kind of by default, and so communicating those ideas are somewhat universal. Like the climate or the impact of climate on business or AI. So we may think about regional nuance, but generally where we believe we're speaking to a kind of global business person, global audience. But I think we could do more to think about regional nuances in the content we create. But it's a really good question. But generally, we think of the kind of the highest level of, you know, the business is a universal concept, and most business people are operating with the same challenges and frameworks.
From long-term articles to short-term digital content, the modes of communication have shifted dramatically. Which format or platform do you find most effective today for engaging both academic and practitioner audiences?
We find the shorter the more engagement we get. So let's say, for example, we create a 3-minute video with a faculty member about their research. We're looking for clips that we can take out of that are short and pithy and get to some really important ideas quickly, and translate those ideas. We'll even ask the faculty member, to clarify and say something again, so we can get those clips, so we can use them on mediums where short of content is consumed more. So YouTube Shorts, social media, other places, because that's the sort of first place we want to grab the attention of the audience, and then we want them to go deeper and look for more content. And I still believe that people are watching long videos. We've had a bunch of really successful YouTube videos that are they're full videos of events where someone is speaking, like an hour and a half, and they get thousands and thousands of views, like 40,000 views. So that's we sort of draw people in to get them to understand what we're working on and the content we have, and they go deeper and go to longer format content.
At their core, great stories often focus on people. How do you balance the human dimension of storytelling, leaders, entrepreneurs, consumers, with the abstract concept of market data and theories?
Yes, so the human element is obviously key here. Business people are faced with very similar challenges, and they're looking for ways they can overcome them and deal with them effectively. So a lot of the research we look at, we try to anchor that in the experience of a leader or an entrepreneur or a consumer, and then show how the evidence sort of explains that challenge or how it can be how the information we're sharing can help business leaders or others be more effective. So yeah, so starting with the human is a classic journalistic approach, and it's something that we try to do as well because I think it really pulls people in to the ideas we're trying to tell them about.
Roland, what newsroom practices such as fact-checking, narrative framing, or audience testing do you find most transferable and valuable when shaping institutional content in business education?
Well, I think they all apply. Um, Good headlines, great fact checking, testing what works, seeing what audiences are interested in. I think the other thing is we try to look for narrative waves. So, if we look ahead to see what may be resonating in the public discourse coming up. Maybe it's a Federal Reserve meeting that's particularly important, or some event. There have been some really interesting consumer stories. I'm sorry, brand stories recently. Some branding changes that have sort of blown up in the news, and we have some interesting content and research that we can share with people when they're looking at those stories and get into the conversations in social media and other places.
In an era of information overload, what are your strategies for ensuring that high quality business insight break through the noise and actually reach decision makers?
Well, I'd say you kind of break through by knowing what matters to your audience, not necessarily by making more content or kind of shouting louder, if you like. So we do use market research. We do monitor what's working well, the kinds of content that's resonating with people. We solicit feedback from our alumni, obviously a really important part of our audience, and we kind of zero in on analytics, seeing what's relevant more broadly. So yeah, those insights help us speak more effectively to our audiences.
Roland, I would like to conclude this episode with one last question. What do you see as the future of business storytelling in the digital age? And how should institutions like Columbia adapt to maintain credibility, relevance, and impact on a global stage?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a lot of change, obviously. There are a lot of new technological tools that people are using, AI, agentic AI, and others. It's really exciting and also daunting of what's possible. But I still think storytelling is important. Really good content is resonates with people, particularly when it's very valuable to them and helpful. So that kind of if you can marry that great storytelling element with the new technology and that's making people more efficient, faster, they enable people to be enabling individuals really to do even more than they did before in the kind of content marketing world. I think you're off to a good start there. I think you have to keep up with all those technologies and understand them and know what's important. How are you getting noticed by the various generative AIs that are out there? How are you getting your content noticed and read and served up in searches? So a lot of that's important. So I'd say the basics of storytelling with the great new technologies that are coming along, people who can master those two things, I think will be in good shape.
Roland, thank you for sharing your insights on how storytelling bridges the worlds of journalism and business education. Your reflections on translating complex research into accessible narratives while upholding editorial integrity offers valuable lessons for anyone navigating today's digital landscape. We truly appreciate the wisdom you have brought to the newsroom to boardroom, and we are grateful that you have had as our guest for today's podcast episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.